Welcome to Courtney's Food Fix, Fuel for Your Fullest Life. We have been talking about the wealthy walnut this week. If you guys didn't see our companion video, check it out. I think it's just next door. We talk about all the richness, how the walnut is the boss. And so now we are making a walnut cake today. And actually what I'm doing, oh yeah, the oven's ready. Are we ready for everything? So now, what I'm doing is I'm toasting nuts, and that may not seem like a big deal, but I thought it would be good because to me it is one of the most important parts of this recipe. And a lot of times I find that nuts get toasted incorrectly, and this recipe is really simple, so I'm going to go over the ingredients and then you'll get it. So in this recipe, and it's actually a recipe I got out of Savoy like years ago, and it's become a classic, and I've modified it so many different ways. And it was actually, they said that they got it from a walnut miller in France. So here we go. So in this recipe, look at me, I'm almost falling. We've got our chopped walnuts, we got eggs, sugar, walnut oil, dry white wine, flour, baking powder, and salt. And I mean, it's so simple that the few things that you put in it are truly key. So I just finished toasting my walnuts. Whenever you toast nuts, you always want to toast them in a dry pan, no oil, no water. The other thing is, soon as, and depending on what you're trying to get out of it, like for me, when I eat walnuts regularly for nutrition, I eat them raw. That's the best form of them. But when I put them in certain dishes, if I want them more neutral, then I'll add them into a cake and they'll be raw. In this case, this cake needs the bump up. It needs that toastiness. So if you'll see the color of the walnuts, they're nice and brown. I can smell them. They smell wonderful. And what you're smelling in that toast is the oil. And that's the part that is going to burn the fastest, and that's the part that you don't want to burn. So I just wanted to show that color. You can see how I've cut them so that they're going to add a little texture, but then there's still little pieces in there that will fall into the flour. All right, now that we've done that, let me find a bowl, put them in. All right, here we go. Come on, baby. Oh yeah, those are nice and warm and toasty. And now we don't need our burner any longer. Okay, so now we've got our nuts toasted, and you all know I love to tell you all about the most important parts of the recipe. Most important part of this particular recipe, the toasting of the nuts, which we've done, and the walnut oil and the white wine. Oh, I forgot my white wine. Let me get that. All right, got that now. Isn't this fun? All right, so combine. We're going to put our eggs and our sugar. I'm using a turbinado. You could use a brown sugar. It's not as traditional, but it will give it a little more depth. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my sugar in now, and then we'll get to the other good parts. So I'm adding my sugar in. I've got my whisk. I really wanted a metal whisk. Let's see if I have another one down here. No, we're at home together on this one, aren't we? Okay, good thing this one isn't very difficult. All right, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just breaking up my sugar so that when I add my eggs, I don't have any other big pieces. Now I'm going to add in my eggs. All right, and now that we've done that, we've got great color going on. All right, and really, let's just do this. Let's just rock and roll. Oh, this is a funny one today. Refrigerator is open and it's talking. All right. We got our eggs and sugar. Everybody's in on the game today. Now, let's talk about our walnut oil. Now here I've got my walnut oil, and then I'll talk a little bit about nut oils in general. Here I've got my walnut oil. If you see, it's got a nice sort of mapley color, which is what you want. You want it to, it shouldn't be clear. It should have some brownness to it, which is really great. I got this walnut oil from California farmers off of their land. Now I brought this company because this, I'm gonna try and say it, yeah, it's Trignell. All right, so this Trignell, they're produced out of California. You'll see them a lot in the grocery store. They make a lot of the oils and a lot of the nut oils. This one actually happens to be pistachio oil. And one of the important things that I'm bringing up here is, not unless you've gotten the oils from a local farmer, if you are purchasing oils and outside of olive oils, but especially nut oils, because you don't use a lot of them. They're so rich, you only need a little bit as you add them into salad dressings. You really want to try and get them in a metal tin because it slows down the oxidation. And so then, the rays can't get in. So that's the only reason why I'm showing you this pistachio oil container. All right, now, in this recipe we're adding, so we're going to add our walnut oil, and we're adding in 1/3 of a cup. So we're adding in our 1/3 of a cup of the walnut oil. There we go. And then, just perfect. And then now what we're going to add in is our dry white wine. Now, you all might have seen me use this brand before. I like this brand. They've been using them through Trader Joe's. They also do a red blend. This one is nice. This one has a Viognier, it's Roussanne, and a Marsanne in it. And all of those are very floral whites, very floral French whites. Thought that was appropriate for this particular recipe. I like them because it's a good standard, very inexpensive table wine, but at the same point, because of its floral, just a tiny touch of sweetness, to me it actually works well for cooking with, and in this case we're going to bake with it. So now we've doubled it, and you guys notice I didn't put my glasses back on. We're doing a little Russian roulette. Now let's add that in. And actually, just before I'm going to add it in, I'm just going to stir it because I actually put the oil in first, which if I'm mixing different liquids and I'm using an oil, I actually like to use the more water-based ones first, so then they actually, so that the oil's more on top and it's assisting the oil out of the measuring cup. But now we're going to add that in. We did pretty good because we've left very little on there. I mean, and the nut oils are so pricey. You don't want to leave all your nut oil in your measuring cup. Now we're going to mix that in. Yep. And we got a good froth going here. Almost looks yeasty. It's a great color. And then now we've got those. And then now let's get to our dries. And we're going to do this the Courtney Townsend way, where I like to do things in a bowl. Oh, here comes the dog. Like I said, everybody's in on the party. So here I've got my flour. Now, one of the things I mentioned in the last video is you can use, especially for people celiac and avoiding flour, you can use a nut flour. If you do, I would combine maybe a nut flour with a different type of grain. Today, I'm actually using an ancient grain mix, which I believe has quinoa, mullet, and buckwheat in it. And I like to use that sometimes. What happens though is those have a different absorption level, so your cake comes in more dense. It can come in much more moist at the same time, but sometimes it doesn't release as easily out of the pan. So I'm gonna go ahead and here I've got my leaveners, I've got my baking powder, my 2 teaspoons of baking powder, I don't know, and my 1/8 teaspoon of salt, my sea salt, and I'm going to add part of that in here because I don't feel like using 2 bowls. And then that way they're going to go ahead and sift together. And then again, I'll add my remainder. And then I'll add my remainder of leavener. And then that way I'm cutting down with as much effort. So I'm going to do this. Now again, a cake like this, especially a lot of the cakes that have a oil base, you really don't, they mimic a quick bread, and you really don't want to overmix them. You just want to mix them through. So now we're adding our last bit of flour in, and then we're going to take this home. Got our flour, then we'll fold in our nuts. Now if you've also noticed that this doesn't have a lot of vanilla, it doesn't have other things in it. This is a tea cake to me. This tastes beautiful, is not sweet, it is very light. It can be combined with other things. It can even be pan fried. You know, I don't know how many of y'all used to pan fry your day-old cornbread. I like to. Now we put in our, ooh baby, our toasted nuts. And again, we've just nice and mixed in. We've got our butter and flour tin already. Get in the bottom, make sure it's ready to roll, and we're in, I think. And this, if you notice that my tin is a little bit, it's a little bit wider than a standard 9-inch, and I am using a 9-inch cake pan. And I like that because this recipe will come up decently high. So now we'll go into the oven. We already heard it beep. And then let's finish this out. Can't cook if you can't make some sort of a mess. Now, voila, we've got our beautiful walnut cake. And it's nice and plain. I love plain pastries. I used to do really complicated ones, and I find that after I've eaten all that, I don't want that. I want something that makes me feel homey and warm. I've got my slicer. I'm gonna go ahead and I am just going to slice one pretty piece. All right, you're gonna do that, and a little bit of sugars. Oh, nice, we got a nice toast on the bottom. Look at that color. Yes, it's pretty. And we'll take our cake and we will put it on our plate. And again, this is a cake I don't want a lot with. You could even add a little bit of melted butter. You can eat it the way that it is. I think it tastes beautiful, especially with a little bit of fresh jam. This jam is actually courtesy of Grace Carroll, who has Akira's Book Club. So if you guys have any young ones out there, check her out on Instagram, Akira's Book Club. And beautiful Akira, if you saw any of my videos where I was cooking with this wonderful young girl, Akira. But I love this just like this. And she, Grace, made this beautiful plum jam, and I got a jar of it, and this is the way that I like to enjoy my walnut cake, and especially with a cup of tea. And I got that ready to rumble. It's already made a pot, and there we go. And oh, my spoon's dirty. Oh. And there we go. And there's our walnut cake. And the most important thing to remember is tea cake, baby. It's not sugar head cake. It's for in the middle of the afternoon, or you could eat it in the morning, but this is not your sugary cake. All right, thank you guys always for your time. Thank you for giving love to walnuts this week, and I'll see you next week. Courtney's Food Fix Fuel for your fullest life.